I'm in my late 20s, and for the last 3 years, I've been married to Daniel. We live in a small, cozy apartment in the heart of the city. Life was simple, comfortable. We had our routines, lazy Sunday mornings with coffee, random movie nights, and spontaneous walks in the park. It wasn't anything extraordinary, but it was our perfect little world. I didn't need anything else. We had love, we had trust, and I honestly believed we had everything. Daniel had always been so loving and caring. He'd text me constantly, telling me about his day, asking about mine, sharing little details that kept me connected to him even when he was at work. It was something I never thought twice about because it felt so natural. We would laugh at inside jokes, and I never once had a reason to doubt his loyalty or commitment. Life felt secure, predictable, and in a way, I thought we were invincible. But one day, things began to change, though at first, I couldn't quite pinpoint why. It started off small, nothing that screamed something is wrong, but enough to make me uneasy. Daniel became a little more distant. His texts weren't as frequent, and when he did respond, it felt off, like there was something he wasn't telling me. His tone changed, more curt and distant, like his mind wasn't fully here anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't as present as he used to be. It wasn't just the texts. I started noticing how protective he was of his phone. Before, he'd leave it lying around, sometimes unlocked. But lately, he would take it everywhere with him, even to the bathroom, which was odd. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was just being careful, or maybe I was being paranoid. But as the days passed, it didn't sit right with me. I brushed it off, but the feeling lingered in the back of my mind, like a quiet whisper I couldn't ignore. It's funny how the smallest changes can make you start questioning everything. He'd always been so open with me, and now there were these little shifts, these subtle signs, that seemed to tell me something was wrong. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just a busy schedule or stress at work. Something inside me started to wonder, was he hiding something? But I never imagined it would turn into what it did. It wasn't just the texting anymore. It was the way he started acting around his phone. I first noticed it one evening when he went into the kitchen to make dinner. I went to grab a glass of water, and there he was, phone in hand, clutched tightly against his chest. It felt strange. He never used to do that. He would leave his phone on the coffee table, open and visible, like he had nothing to hide. But now he wouldn't let it out of his sight, even when he went to the bathroom or to bed. It wasn't like him. I tried to brush it off at first. Maybe he was just being cautious, or maybe it was work-related stress. He had a big project coming up. I convinced myself I was overthinking, being paranoid. But the more I saw it, the more I couldn't ignore it. One night, I decided to test it. I went into the living room, where he was lounging on the couch, his phone resting on his lap. He didn't see me at first, so I casually walked over and reached for it, just to see if he'd let me look at something on his screen. The moment I touched it, he jolted upright and grabbed it, pulling it away from my hands. The look on his face, almost offensive, told me everything I needed to know. He acted like I had invaded his personal space in the most unforgivable way, and for a split second, I felt like I'd done something wrong. But deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. He never used to react like that. The next few days, the oddness continued. One evening, as I was putting away some laundry in the bedroom, I overheard Daniel talking on the phone in the living room. His voice was low, hushed, but I caught a few words. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the moment I heard him quickly say, "I'll call you back later," and then hang up as soon as I walked in, I knew something was off. His tone had changed. There was this stiffness in his voice, almost like he was caught off guard. It wasn't the casual, relaxed tone I was used to hearing when he was on the phone with friends or family. It felt more like he was hiding something. I decided to confront him, but I kept my cool. I asked if everything was okay, if there was something he wasn't telling me. He brushed it off, of course, claiming it was just a colleague calling about work. But then I noticed something else, the messages. Every time I asked to see something on his phone, he hesitated. It's just work stuff, he'd say. And it always was, apparently. Work, work, and more work. But the messages were always vague, without any real substance. No pictures, no shared links, no personal messages. It felt like he was hiding something behind the surface of this work stuff. I began to question everything. Was this just a coincidence, or was there more to this than I was willing to accept? I tried to let it go at first, but the more I thought about it, the more the doubts crept in. Something in his behavior was shifting. It wasn't as simple as just a busy schedule. There was a pattern, one that I couldn't ignore anymore. It was like watching a slow unraveling of something that was once whole and perfect. And with each passing day, it became harder to push that nagging feeling to the back of my mind. One evening, after dinner, Daniel went into the shower. It was just a routine night, or so I thought. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine, but I couldn't shake this feeling that something was wrong. The nagging doubts from the past few days lingered in my mind, and it was as if the quiet tension between us had grown into something louder. I didn't want to feel this way. I wanted to believe the best in Daniel, but the small, odd things kept adding up, and now they felt like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit. I told myself it was nothing. I shouldn't go snooping, shouldn't invade his privacy. But curiosity got the better of me. It wasn't like I had planned this. Just a quick glance at his phone, maybe to look at a message or check something trivial. That's what I told myself anyway. Nothing serious. But as soon as I picked up his phone from the coffee table, I felt this strange rush in my chest, a mixture of guilt and anticipation. His phone was locked, which wasn't a surprise. Lately, he'd been more protective of it, so I assumed it was just an extra layer of security. The thing was, the code had changed. It wasn't the same one he'd used for months. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't meant to notice that, but there it was, and suddenly everything felt heavier. Was it just a coincidence? Was he just being more careful? I hesitated. I almost put the phone down, but the curiosity was eating at me now. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't going to go through everything, just check one or two things. After a few minutes, my fingers brushed against the edge of the phone screen, and I accidentally unlocked it. It was like fate had decided to hand me the key, and I was too far gone to turn back. My heart was pounding in my chest. Part of me felt justified, like I was finally going to find out what had been bothering me. The other part, the rational part, felt sick with guilt. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be invading his privacy, but I couldn't stop myself now. It felt like everything I had been sensing, all the things that had seemed off in the past weeks, were finally about to make sense. I started scrolling through his messages. At first, they were nothing unusual, messages about work, casual exchanges with friends. But then I saw a thread with a name I didn't recognize, Sophia. My heart skipped. There was something in the way the messages were phrased, the playful tone, the inside jokes, the emojis. It was too familiar, too personal. I could feel my stomach twist as I read more. The messages weren't just friendly, they were intimate, flirtatious even. There was one in particular that stood out. I can't wait to see you again tonight. I'll make sure Daniel's not home. My hands shook as I read it again. The implications were clear, but the words themselves didn't explicitly confirm anything. It could just be a joke, right? Maybe I was overreacting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just friendly banter. I scrolled further, hoping for an explanation, maybe some innocent context that would make sense of this. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself, everything pointed to something I couldn't ignore. My mind was racing, filled with 1,000 thoughts, none of them good. I didn't have solid proof of an affair yet, but the evidence was there, like an unspoken truth hanging in the air. The more I read, the more my chest tightened, the more the ground beneath me felt like it was slipping away. I wanted to stop. I wanted to close the phone, walk away, pretend I hadn't seen anything. But I couldn't. It was like a dark, sickening truth had been placed in front of me, and no matter how hard I tried to look away, I couldn't. I wasn't ready to confront him yet, but I couldn't unsee what I had just found. My heart pounded louder in my chest as I tried to gather myself, knowing that whatever was happening, everything had just changed. Daniel walked back into the apartment, his usual smile fading when he saw me sitting on the couch, phone still in my hand. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I had rehearsed this in my mind, trying to calm myself to keep my voice steady. But now that the time had come, the reality felt like it was crashing down on me. "Hey, babe," he said, his tone light, almost too light, as he set down his bag. He must have noticed the tension in the air because his smile faltered a little. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. My hands were shaking as I put his phone down. I needed him to understand how serious this was. Daniel looked at me for a moment, then sat down beside me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself before speaking. "I found some messages on your phone. Between you and someone named Sophia," I said slowly. "And I'm confused. Daniel, I'm hurt. This isn't like you. I don't know what's going on, but I need to know." His face immediately hardened, and he let out a soft chuckle, though it didn't reach his eyes. "What are you talking about? Why are you looking through my phone? You've got to be kidding me. You know I value my privacy, right?" I tried to hold his gaze, but something in the way he reacted set off an alarm in my mind. "I'm not kidding. Daniel, I saw the messages. They weren't just normal texts. There was something more to it. You can't deny it." He shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair. "You're making something out of nothing. Sophia's just a friend. Those messages, they were harmless. We joke around. It's nothing." I pressed my lips together, trying to keep my voice calm, but I could feel the anger rising. "If it's nothing, then why are you acting so different lately? Why is your phone locked now? Why won't you let me see anything?" Daniel's face flushed, and I could see the frustration building. "I've been stressed, okay? Work's been overwhelming. And I guess I've been a little distant, but that's not what this is about. You're imagining things. I've got nothing to hide." His words were fast, defensive. He wasn't looking at me anymore, his eyes darting to the floor as if he was avoiding my gaze. The words felt hollow. I could see through the surface. The more he spoke, the more his story didn't add up. "Daniel, I don't care about work stress. I don't care about you needing space. This isn't about that. This is about trust. And right now, I don't trust you. Not after what I saw." He took a deep breath, looking up at me, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something fear, guilt. He didn't say anything at first, and I could feel the silence stretch between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, he spoke again, but this time, his voice was quieter, more hesitant. "There's something I haven't told you," he said, his eyes avoiding mine. "But it's not what you think. It's complicated." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Complicated? What does that mean?" He shifted again, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's not an affair, okay? But it's been messy. I've been struggling with it. I didn't know how to handle it, how to tell you." My heart sank. "So, what? You've been seeing her." I couldn't keep the tremor from my voice. "No," he said quickly, too quickly. "It's not like that. I haven't been seeing her. We've been talking. But that's all. I swear. It's just that I didn't know how to tell you about her. It's complicated. I didn't want to hurt you." I could feel the walls closing in around me, my chest tightening with every word. There was something in his avoidance of my gaze that said more than anything he was saying. His voice wavered, and I could tell he was hiding something more than he was willing to admit. I had already seen enough, felt enough, to know this wasn't just some harmless friendship. There was something more, something he wasn't telling me, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. "Complicated?" I repeated, my voice cracking with disbelief. "How could you let it get this far, Daniel? Why didn't you just talk to me? You could have told me. But instead, you've been lying, hiding things from me." He opened his mouth to respond, but the words stuck in his throat. For the first time in this conversation, he seemed lost, as if the weight of his own lies was too much to carry. I didn't need him to say it outright. I could see it in his eyes. The fear, the guilt, the regret, it was all there. He wasn't just hiding something. He was hiding everything. And that was when I realized whatever was happening between Daniel and Sophia, it was far worse than I had imagined. The following night, I could hardly sleep. My mind raced, going over every word Daniel had said, every little gesture that had felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling of being lied to, of something dark lurking just beneath the surface. I had to know the truth. So I decided to follow him. When he left the apartment, telling me he had another late work meeting, my heart skipped a beat. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed my jacket, slipped out the door, and trailed him from a distance. He drove with purpose, as if he had no idea that I was behind him, every turn feeling like a nail being hammered into my chest. He finally parked in front of a dimly lit bar. My stomach dropped. It wasn't the place I expected, but I couldn't help but feel that overwhelming pit of dread. He didn't go in alone. I watched from across the street as he waited, scanning the area. And then she appeared. Sophia. I saw them approach each other, and in that moment, I felt time stand still. My breath caught in my throat as they embraced, her hands lingering on his shoulders, his arms tightening around her. The kiss they shared felt like a punch to the gut. I could barely hold myself together. Every part of me wanted to rush across the street, confront them both, but I knew I couldn't. Not like this. I quickly turned on my heel, retreating before they could see me. My mind was racing with disbelief. My husband, the man I thought I knew, was having an affair. I stumbled back to the car, fighting the tears that were threatening to break free. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the steering wheel. The drive home felt like a blur. The world around me seemed distant, like I was watching it all through a fogged-up window. I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my head. Daniel and Sophia, the way they looked at each other, the way he touched her like he'd never touched me. Every ounce of trust one had in him shattered in that one moment. Once I got home, I didn't even bother taking off my coat. I just collapsed onto the couch, the weight of it all crushing me. My eyes were blurred with tears, but I couldn't look away from the spot where he usually sat. The place where we had spent so many nights laughing, talking, planning for the future. It all felt like a lie now. I couldn't stop the flood of emotions that hit me all at once. Betrayal, anger, heartbreak, confusion. I thought about everything we had been through, every moment we had shared, and it felt like I had been living in a dream. How had I not seen the signs? How had I been so blind to the truth? I was so caught up in the life we had built together, I couldn't see the cracks forming beneath the surface. My mind spiraled. The memories of our first date, our wedding day, all the plans we had for the future, they all felt meaningless now. I thought back to the way he would always take his phone with him, how he had started locking it, how he'd become more distant. I had brushed it off, convinced myself I was just overthinking things. But now it all made sense. Every little detail fell into place like pieces of a shattered puzzle. I spent hours just staring at the wall, numb. I couldn't bring myself to move, to do anything. My mind kept going back to that moment when I saw them together, the look on his face when he embraced her. It wasn't just a fling. It was real. And I've been living in a lie for so long. I felt so small, so insignificant. How could he do this to me? How could he betray everything we had built together for someone else? I had trusted him, loved him with everything I had. And now, all of that was gone. The anger came in waves. I wanted to scream, to lash out at him, to demand answers. But in that moment, I was too broken, too hurt. I couldn't even fathom what to say or do next. The man I thought I knew, the one I had built a life with, was gone. And in his place was someone who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I don't know how long I sat there, just lost in my thoughts, my emotions. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. My world had been turned upside down, and I had no idea how to move forward. The next morning, I could hardly bring myself to face him. The night had been a blur of pain, and every part of me felt broken, like I was walking through life with a shattered heart. But I knew I couldn't keep hiding from the truth anymore. I had to confront him, to demand answers. I couldn't live in this limbo any longer. When Daniel came home from work, I didn't wait for him to sit down. I stood in front of him, my voice trembling, but my eyes filled with determination. I told him I knew everything. I told him I had seen them together, him and Sophia, at that bar. I told him I knew about the affair, the lies, and the betrayal. I showed him the truth, the cold, undeniable proof that I had watched unfold right in front of my eyes. He stood there, silent for a moment, his face pale. For a few seconds, I thought he might deny it, but the look in his eyes gave it away. The guilt, the shame, it was all there, written across his face like a confession. Slowly, he sank into a chair, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, as though trying to hold himself together. He finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know how to end it," he admitted, his voice cracking with regret. "I'm so sorry. I was ashamed. I didn't think you would understand." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. He hadn't ended it, not because he didn't want to, but because he thought I wouldn't understand. It was the worst kind of justification. The lie that said he cared about me, but not enough to be honest with me. My heart felt as though it had been torn open. I stood there, staring at him, unable to comprehend how everything we had built could have been so easily destroyed. 6 months of lies, of secret meetings, of betrayal. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How had he been able to look me in the eyes every day, hold me in his arms at night, and carry on with this affair? I had trusted him with everything, and he had thrown it all away for someone else. He started to cry, his eyes red and swollen. The sight of him, broken and remorseful, only made the pain worse. I wanted to feel angry, to yell at him, to make him feel the full weight of what he had done. But I didn't have the energy for that. Instead, tears streamed down my face as I tried to process the depth of the betrayal. The man I had married, the person I had trusted with my heart, had broken me in ways I never thought possible. We cried together, but it wasn't a moment of reconciliation. It was a moment of grief. Grief for the relationship we had lost, for the love that had turned into something unrecognizable. I couldn't stop the tears. The pain was overwhelming, suffocating, and I wondered if anything could ever make it stop. I couldn't understand why he had done it, why he hadn't come to me when he was struggling. Why hadn't he trusted me with his feelings, with his doubts? Instead, he had hidden behind a mask, living a double life, while I stood there completely oblivious. The betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was the fact that he had never felt safe enough with me to share his true self, his struggles. As we sat there, crying, trying to make sense of it all, I couldn't help but wonder if this was something that could ever be repaired. Could trust be rebuilt after something so devastating? Could we ever go back to the way things were? And for the first time in years, I felt completely alone. I had no idea what to do next, no idea where to go from here. The future I had imagined with Daniel seemed impossible now. The silence between us was heavy, filled with the weight of everything we had lost. And as I looked at him, broken and regretful, I realized that no matter how much he apologized, no matter how many tears he shed, nothing could undo the damage he had done. I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. The man I thought I knew was gone, and in his place was a stranger who had shattered my trust in the most unforgivable way. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I could ever forgive him or if I could ever find peace again. But in that moment, all I could feel was the overwhelming pain of the betrayal and the realization that my life, as I had known it, would never be the same. The decision to leave wasn't immediate, but once I made it, there was no turning back. Every conversation, Every tear-filled moment with Daniel had brought me to this painful realization. The love we once shared had been tainted beyond repair. His betrayal had shattered the trust that held everything together. The man I had married no longer existed in the way I had known him. And as much as it hurt to admit it, I couldn't stay in a relationship where my heart no longer felt safe. I knew it wasn't just about him. It was about me, too. My self-worth had been eroded by his lies, and I realized that I had to move forward, whether I was ready or not. I had to reclaim my life, my peace of mind, and my sense of self. That night, I packed my things in silence. The apartment that had once been our sanctuary now felt foreign, filled with echoes of the love that had been. As I gathered my belongings, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with deep sorrow. The love I had for him was still there in some ways, but it was clouded by the pain and betrayal. I couldn't keep holding on to something that was no longer healthy for either of us. When I walked out of that apartment, I felt both free and lost. The familiar routine I had lived for 3 years was now a memory, and everything that followed was uncharted territory. I went to stay with a friend for a while, not knowing where I would go next, but knowing that I couldn't stay in the place where all my memories with Daniel had been made. In the quiet of my new space, away from the life we had built together, I began to reflect. There were moments of deep sadness, of course, but there was also clarity. I realized how much I had overlooked in the name of love, how much I had ignored for the sake of maintaining a perfect image of my marriage. The betrayal had taught me something I didn't want to learn, but desperately needed to. Trust is fragile, and love is never enough when there is no respect, no honesty. I began to understand that I deserved more than a life of doubt and pain. I deserved a love built on transparency, trust, and mutual respect. More importantly, I realized that I could be whole again on my own. I didn't need Daniel's validation to feel worthy or to feel loved. My worth came from within, and though it would take time, I was determined to rediscover that strength. The days after leaving him were difficult, filled with waves of emotion, but I found comfort in small moments. The quiet of my new place, the peace that came with not having to wonder where he was or who he was with, it gave me the space to breathe again. I felt like I was taking the first steps toward healing, even though I wasn't sure where the road would lead. But in those quiet moments, I found hope. Hope that I could rebuild. Hope that I could love again. First, myself, and eventually, someone who would treat me with the respect and honesty I deserved. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had control of my life again. I wasn't defined by Daniel's betrayal anymore. I was not a victim, but a survivor. And though the future felt uncertain, I was ready to move forward. With each day, I healed a little more, and with each passing moment, I found strength in knowing that I could face whatever came next, alone or with someone new, but always, finally, with peace. Looking back, I can't help but remember how beautiful my relationship with Daniel once was. We had shared so many dreams, so many plans for the future, and I had believed that we were invincible together. But sometimes, things unravel in ways you never expect, and the beautiful picture you once had slowly fades into something unrecognizable. What was once filled with love and laughter has now become a painful chapter in my life, a chapter one never imagined I'd have to write. But through this heartache, I've learned more about myself than I ever thought possible. I've discovered the strength within me that I never knew existed. My ability to stand up, to walk away from what was familiar, and to rebuild has shown me that I am stronger than I believed. More than that, I'm learning to trust myself, my instincts, my worth, and my ability to heal. This isn't the end of my story, though. It's only the beginning of a new chapter, one where I take control of my own happiness, where I put myself first, and where I rebuild trust, not with others, but with myself. It's a journey that will take time, and there will be days when I doubt if I'm truly moving forward. But I know now that I am. Every day is a step toward healing and finding peace, and that gives me hope. So this story, this painful chapter, may be behind me, but it's just another beginning. And I'm ready for whatever comes next.